All right, here we go. This is our 6.2 multiplying polynomials lesson. This should be a really easy lesson and review. The biggest point that you need to take, though, is that you just need to be careful with what you're doing and keep good track of your signs. So just some vocabulary to remember. A monomial is a single piece. So an example of a monomial would be like 2x squared y to the fifth. A binomial has two pieces, so we're going to see these today. That would be something like 4xy minus 3z to the eighth. That has two separate pieces, right? The 4xy and the 3z. Polynomial is just anything that has any multiple of pieces, so I'm just reminding you of that vocabulary. The real important thing for you to remember, and this is what I would really write down as the start of your notes, is just to remember exponent rules for multiplication. So let's look, if we have 2x to the fifth times 3x to the ninth, remember we're going to group our coefficients together and multiply those, so that's going to give me 6. And then we're just counting up how many x's that means we have. Remember, x to the fifth would be 5 x's, x to the ninth is 9, so altogether that's going to give me x to the 14th. Now compare that if they had asked us to do 2x to the fifth plus 3x to the ninth, then I couldn't do anything. That in itself is already simplified. Another example maybe for you to write down, if we had 3x to the fifth plus 8x to the fifth, we can add those because they have the same variables with the same exponents, but the exponent doesn't change. The exponent does not change. You should probably write that down. So the answer here would be 11, because that's 8 plus 3, x to the fifth. So notice that the exponent does change when you multiply, right? I got 14 here at the very beginning. It does not change when you add or combine like terms. Keep that in mind today. All right, 3 quick examples. Multiplying. My guess is you already know how to do this, so I'm just going to remind you the things that you need to remember. There are 2 pieces here that are distributing. First, I'm going to distribute my x. So 3x. You can write out separate multiplication problems, but I want you to get to where you can just see what that's going to be. So 3x, x times negative 8x is negative 8x squared. X times negative 4x squared is negative 4x to the third. Make sure you see where I'm counting all of those exponents, because this first one's x to the first. All right, then my negative 6. Remember, that's negative 6, not just a 6. Negative 6 is going to distribute, so I'm going to get 3 more pieces. You can stack these, however, or you can just like write them out. That is up to you. I think I'm going to stack them just so you can see that method. So negative 6 times 3 is 18, and since that's not going to combine with any of the pieces that I already have so far, I'm going to write 18 separately. So negative 18, then negative 6 times negative 8, that's positive 48x, plus 24x squared. You see, if I go in order, now my exponents are lining up so that I can just combine straight down. So negative 18 plus, what is that, 51x plus 16x squared minus 4x to the third. And the only thing that I would maybe fix is you may want to reorder how that's written, make it in standard form. Remember, standard form is where my exponents are going to go down. So to rewrite this in standard form, I'm going to start with negative 4x to the third plus 16x squared plus 51x minus 18. You could also do that when you combine like terms. All right. Example 2, modeling with multiplication. If you haven't figured it out by now, modeling just means word problems. It looks much, much more difficult than it is. So take a second to read through this problem. I would pause the video and read through it. Okay, and they're wanting us to write a polynomial. Remember, for your test, for me and for the state test, writing doesn't mean solving. You're literally just writing it out. So if we were really following these directions, they want to know what is the total cost. And if we think about that here, we could find the total by doing the number of toys multiplied by the cost. That just makes kind of logical sense. So really, if I use their notation, T of x equals N of x times C of x. And those of you that had me last year, or you may have seen this even in geometry or in your Algebra 1 class, remember when you write these polynomials out to multiply, you have to put them in parentheses because you're multiplying the entire polynomial by the other entire polynomial. So on these, because it just says to write, it doesn't specify that it needs to be simplified, I'm just going to say T of x equals 0.7x squared. I'm getting this from the word problem. This is what it tells me nx is, times, and then I'm going to do C of x. I'm going to run out of room. If on your test I tell you to write and simplify, then you should actually do all that multiplication. If it just says to write, like this one does, I'm just going to leave it like this, because if all it is saying is to write and you multiply and make a mistake, then you're going to get it wrong, even if you know how to write it correctly. So do the least amount possible, depending on what the directions tell you. Okay, last one. And these are actually even easier. It might look harder, but it's not. The directions here are going to be to verify. That means to prove that it's true. So they're giving me the problem and the answer. And all they're asking me to do is verify that this is true. So what we need to do here is just multiply this problem out and prove that the answer they told us we were going to get is actually what we're going to get. So what I want you to do now is pause and take a second to practice this distributive property and see if you get this answer. And then when you're finished, push play and you'll see what I have done. Okay, so when I distributed my x, this is what I got. X to the third plus x squared y plus xy squared. When I multiply my y, I'm going to get negative y x squared minus xy squared minus y to the third. All right, now we just need to look and combine like terms. X to the third has nothing to go with, so it's going to come down, x to the third. X squared y and negative y x squared, even though those are in the opposite order, they're still the same thing, right? That's still two x's and a y all being multiplied together. And hopefully you recognize that since one's positive and one's negative, those cancel. The same thing is going to happen with my xy squareds. Those are actually in the same order this time, so those are also going to cancel. And then I'm left with minus y to the third, which is exactly what they told me the answer was going to be. So the key on these, because they tell you the problem and the answer, you have to show the work so that you can see, so you can actually prove that that is true. All right, so that concludes our lesson. Hopefully that was easy and you're ready for work tomorrow.